lesson I've learned in 2020 is no matter how fast I run, I can't outrun trouble. 2020 turns out to be the year of trouble. Got big trouble all across our world. We've got a nation deeply divided along political lines. We've got the deep trouble of racism and injustice in our country. And to top it all off, we have the trouble of a global pandemic, which whether you think it is nothing or the end of the world, can we at least all agree it's brought a lot of trouble? This is not what I had planned for the year, by the way. My name is Kyle, one of the teaching pastors here at Crossroads. I lead our creative teams. And this is not what I had planned for the year. This wasn't to be the year of trouble. It was to be the year of a great vacation. It's gonna be amazing. Been planning it since last year. An all-inclusive, no kids trip to the Caribbean with my wife and some of our friends. It's gonna be absolutely incredible. Then the pandemic hit and shut the whole thing down. Can't even go there, not happening. And get this, I don't know if you know this, but you can pay for a vacation online in 4 seconds, but the company says it's gonna take 4 months to get my money back, which means I needed a different vacation plan, one that was free. So I called my parents who happened to live near the beach and I said, hey, Mom and Dad, can we come to your house? And they said, yes, which is great. Mom and Dad, thank you so much. Also, just here's a little thing. A week at your parents' house is not quite the same as a week at an all-inclusive with no kids in the Caribbean. It's a little different. It's not the year of the great vacation. Still, my wife and I were like, not the great vacation. Let's make it the year of the pretty okay vacation day. The parents had said we could have a day alone, just the two of us to go out. And so we planned the day. Day comes, we're very excited, get in the car, we drive, we go to our favorite restaurant on the whole entire island where they live. We pull up and there's this handwritten sign on the door. It says, closed indefinitely due to COVID outbreak among employees. And we were like, oh no, that is bad. But fine, we know the verse, suffering produces perseverance, character, hope. We're gonna get to hope here, we're gonna maintain hope. And so we go to our second favorite restaurant, we get there, same signs in the door. Go to our third favorite restaurant, same signs in the door. Go to our fourth favorite restaurant, same signs in the door. Shake it off, it's fine. We just go to the beach, we'll have a great day at the beach. We'll just forget the restaurants, we'll go to a great day at the beach. So we get to the beach, it's crowded. We want peace and quiet, so we see a spot way in the distance. So we start hiking, get all of our crap in the cooler and the beach chairs and the towels and all that stuff. We start hiking down the beach. I can't even emphasize how far we walk, incredibly far down the beach. Sit down, pull out my Kindle, start reading. I'm in heaven, it's amazing. And then what feels like 10 minutes later, I look up, and coming across the sea is a great gray storm cloud, like an intergalactic star destroyer, and it's heading straight towards my chair. Starts to whip rain at us just before we can even move. It's like bullets coming. It's like a Aroldis Chapman fastball. It's just rain and wind whipping up the sand and stinging places you didn't know that sand could even sting. It was horrible and it was awful. Umbrellas are flying across the beach where I assume they went into the ocean and probably stabbed dolphins to death because that's what happens in 2020. It's the year of trouble. The question is, what do you do when trouble comes your way? There's really only 3 options how to handle trouble, and you probably default to one of them. The first option is the ignore option, option A. You ignore the trouble. You diminish it, you dismiss it, you pretend it's not real. You're just gonna shove it aside. I did this once in my life with my teeth. See, I'm a logical, educated person. I understand that dental hygiene is important. Still, I decided to ignore the trouble of teeth that kind of hurt and gums that were a little sore. And I didn't go to the dentist for 10 years. Children, do not be like me. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. Because it turns out when you ignore a problem, it does not magically disappear. It methodically gets worse. By the time I got to the dentist, I had a little thing called periodontal disease, which is basically bacteria that eats away your jawbone until you have no more jawbone and no more teeth. Horrible. There's a solve for it. I had to sit in a dentist chair for an hour while they literally peeled my gums off my teeth and power washed underneath of them. Like what you did last Saturday, you went to that thing at Home Depot and you power wash your deck. It was just like that, just for an hour, twice. It was terrible. When you ignore a problem, it doesn't get better. Still, some of us fall into this trap when we experience trouble in our lives. We go with the ignore it route. Maybe this is where you are. Maybe you've been ignoring the trouble of your stalled out career. Maybe you've been ignoring the trouble of your weight gain over the course of the last 4 months in quarantine. Maybe you've been ignoring the trouble in your marriage. Maybe you've been ignoring the trouble in your finances, in your debt. Maybe you've been ignoring the trouble of your addiction, of your anger. Friends, it will not magically disappear. It will methodically get worse. Now, there's a second option for what to do when trouble comes your way. Option B, in many ways, it's the opposite of option A. In option B, you don't ignore the trouble. Instead, you obsess over the trouble. You just look at the trouble. You read every article, every news story, everything. You think about it all day long. You bring it so close that it completely blocks your field of view. The problem here is you lose all sense of scale. Take your fingers like this, just pinch them like this. Remember this game you used to play in elementary school? You like crush people's heads. Just do that right now. Turn to the person next to you and go, I crush your head. I crush you. I crush you. I crush you. Now, what looks in your field of view is that your fingers are so large, they are so powerfully devastating that nothing can possibly stop them. Is that true? No, of course not. It's not true. The same is true of trouble. If you pull trouble so close to you that it completely blocks your field of view, you will lose all sense of scale and you will think that trouble is bigger and more indestructible than it actually is. You focus all your attention on trouble, you'll do the only logical thing. If you see it this big and this mighty and this inconquerable, you do the only logical thing. You'll give up. You'll give up. You lose all hope, not just for right now, but for the future. You'll believe that the trouble isn't just for right now. The trouble isn't just it is and always will be. You'll give up. I wonder if this is what you've done with the trouble in your life. I wonder if you've pulled the trouble so close to you that you can't see anything else and you've given up. Maybe you've pulled the trouble of your physical health so close to you that you've given up hope of ever living pain and medication free. Maybe you've pulled the trouble of your stalled out career so close to your face that it's so painful and you just decided, I'm never gonna catch a break, never gonna happen for me, it's over. Maybe you've pulled the trouble of the disappointment of the loss of your loved one so close to you that it's blocked your view from ever seeing that there could be a good God. Now, there's a third option for how to deal with trouble. It's the Jesus option. Surprise, you're in church, it's the Jesus option. Yes, it's the very best one. It's a two-part process. Part one of the process is that you acknowledge the trouble. You don't diminish the trouble, you don't ignore the trouble, and you also don't inflate the trouble. You don't obsess over the trouble. You look it honestly in the eye for what it is, sober-mindedly, candidly. You say, this is trouble. This is not good. This is unlikely to change quickly. There's a part two. You also acknowledge and believe in the power of a good God who promises victory in your life. You say, this trouble is real, but this trouble is not forever. Jesus put it this way in John 16:33. He said, in this world, you will have trouble. That's part one, but take heart. Part two, I have overcome the world. Yes, there will be trouble, but ultimate victory is coming your way. It may not be exactly the way you want it. It may not be exactly when you want it, but the story isn't over. The story does not end here. It doesn't end now. The story extends into eternity, and you can hope for redemption and victory. Now, I believe for Crossroads, there is trouble. Just look at the global pandemic we're in. Can we just all understand and agree it's not great for a church to close its doors for as long as we have to? We think it's the right decision. We think it's the good decision. We think it's a responsible decision. And also, it's not great. It's trouble. And it would be wrong of us to diminish it or ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist. It'd be wrong of us also to say that this is gonna completely destroy us, because that's not true, either one. The trouble is real and the victory is real too. See, I wholeheartedly believe the trouble we're experiencing right now as a church, as a community, is not the end of the story. In fact, I believe there's a day coming when future generations will look back on right now and the way that we pivoted, the way that we innovated, the way that we continue to care for each other through crisis. And they'll say, that's it. That was the moment. That was the moment the tide turned and our nation started to go back to God. That's what I believe. Think about my personal life. I've got trouble in my personal life the same as you do. I've got a child who we're pretty sure has ADHD. My wife and I, Sarah, we're choosing not to ignore the trouble, and we're also not bringing it so close that it obscures our view. Rather, we're believing what Jesus said. We'll have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. So we're learning. We're learning about the trouble. We're embracing the challenges, but we're not believing this is doomsday for our son. We're believing this is simply a step on the path to his destiny, the good one that God has created for him. You know, personally in my marriage, we have trouble. We had 3 kids in 3 years. Listen, if you ever think to yourself, how could I tank my married sex life? Do that. Have 3 kids in 3 years, because you know what you won't have time for? Yeah, exactly. But rather than give up, rather than go, this is never gonna get good, or that this is never gonna change, rather than ignore the problem, ignoring the uncomfortable, difficult conversations, Sarah and I are saying, no, let's step into it. Let's acknowledge there's trouble, but let's believe that the best intimacy in our marriage isn't what happened before kids, it's what to happen after kids, whether they like it or not. Don't knock on the door, kids, by the way, just leave us alone. What about you? What if you took the third option when trouble came your way? So this trouble is real, this trouble is not small, and this trouble will not win. There is victory for me. What if years from now, your family could look back on what you did right now in this season, and they could say, that was it. That was the moment. That was the moment our family went from completely dysfunctional to amazingly dependable. That was the moment our family went from languishing to loving. What if you could look back years from now on your own life and you could say, that was the moment right there. That was the moment when my career started to turn around. What if you could look back right now on this moment and the way that you interact with God and you could say, that was the moment I confronted the real trouble of my pain, my grief, my disappointment of the loss of my loved one. But I chose to believe the story wasn't over, that there was a good God, and that while it may not come today, victory is on the way. John 16:33, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world.